Today's presentation is on SentinelOne. SentinelOne is an endpoint protection, what we used to call antivirus, but it's much more today. SentinelOne uses artificial intelligence to identify both known and unknown file malware, and it uses AI learning to look at the user's behavior to see if something strange is going on. It's also able to isolate infected endpoints and roll back machines to a prior good state when things do get infected. You'll hear much more about this from Mason. At this point, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Mason. Take it away.
So good to be here again. If any of you were on our previous Lunch and Learns, excited to talk about, I think this is our last series today, and talking about definitely one of my favorite solutions that I work with here at Pax8. This is by far our best-selling product that I work with, and one I know very well. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Want to do a couple things today. Definitely want to show you the SentinelOne platform. I'm going to demo that out for you, but also want to talk about just the state of cybersecurity today, why I think endpoint is probably one of the most important investments you can make in your security stack. I want to define what endpoint protection EDR is. It's a very competitive space right now. So we'll kind of go through all these. I think we have about half an hour, and do want to open it up at the end for any questions that you guys may have. So I want to kick it off with a definition of these terms. So SentinelOne defines themselves as EPP and EDR, right? So what does that mean? And you guys can see my screen? So first I want to do is define what EPP and EDR are, because you'll see these terms, these acronyms thrown around a lot, and they can kind of start to blend together. So the first term, Endpoint Protection Platform, I really view as a holistic category for cybersecurity solutions designed to protect the endpoint. This is kind of a successor term to what you guys may have heard of, antivirus. Another word for endpoint protection platform is, you might hear, next-gen AV. And essentially, these are tools that you put in place that you install on the endpoint to monitor what's going on in the endpoint and block known threats, and in SentinelOne's case, potentially unknown threats. The technology has evolved. So traditional antivirus relied on what are called signatures or reputations. So looking at every file has a hash, and so there were large databases of known threats out there. And so antivirus would perform a scan and look on your system for any of these bad files or bad hashes that they're signatures. But very quickly, bad actors realized all they had to do was change a line of code or just repackage the malware, the ransomware, and it was essentially an unknown threat. It was a brand new threat. So endpoint protection had to evolve. Antivirus had to evolve, and it had to start using machine learning, which is a discipline of artificial intelligence, using heuristics, looking at behavior beyond just a signature, and looking for patterns of behavior that might indicate something is happening, is suspicious or malicious on the machine. And so typically when we're talking about an endpoint protection platform, we're talking about a behavioral-based approach. Same thing with next-gen AV. We're looking beyond signatures. We're analyzing everything that's happening on the endpoint and looking for anomalies, potential attacks that we want to deflect or stop. Now, the second piece is EDR, and this used to be they used to be separate solutions, but now they've really have converged. In today's competitive marketplace, you really do have to provide behavioral-based detection if you want to be relevant, and two, you really should be offering some type of EDR platform. And so what EDR does is it actually tracks everything that's going on, and then is able to show a storyline of where did the attack originate, what happened, what parts of the machine were impacted, and then also giving you a set of tools to respond. So I think of EDR as like a flight has a black box recorder, everything that happens on that flight. EDR is the same exact thing for an endpoint. And so when if an attack does happen, right, no solution is perfect. EDR is going to tell us what happened, how it happened, and then give us tools to respond with potentially a remediation command or a rollback command, which we'll talk about. Or maybe I want to use to isolate an infected machine. So beyond just that traditional, it blocked or it didn't block, now I actually have information, context to go off of. So just to kind of explain those terms. So sure you guys have all seen ransomware in the news, malware in the news. Just some quick stats for you. I won't read through these, but ransomware remains the most prominent malware threat. It's impacting businesses from the SMB to the enterprise. Sure you guys have seen the news, Colonial Pipeline, JBS meatpacking plant, and then most recently the Kaseya ransomware incident, which targeted specifically the SMB. So it's not just limited to the enterprise. It's everyone. And actually, the SMB is often more vulnerable because they don't have a lot of the security budgets to invest in, a very, very advanced security stack or security suite with their own SOCs. And so, in my opinion, one of the best investments you can make is at the endpoint, especially with a remote workforce. Everyone's going remote. The endpoint has become the perimeter. Okay. So just some key takeaways. Again, I want to read off these, but ransomware malware here to stay. Investing in protection against that should be a priority. Obviously, looking for best of breed solutions that can protect. Endpoint protection, EDR is a key part of that protection mechanism, probably the most important, aside from backups, having good backups in place. But what we really want to look for here are solutions that have ransomware mitigation and protection. That's a key differentiator in the space, and I think SentinelOne wins on that for a number of reasons. So just some key points, real quick. SentinelOne is going to provide endpoint protection and EDR on a single agent. A lot of other solutions out there actually require different agents with different costs. SentinelOne, you're just going to get one single agent, easy to deploy, easy to manage, providing both features. SentinelOne, compared to traditional AV, leans very heavily on their their AI engines, their behavioral-based engines. Also, pre-execution AI, looking at the characteristics of a file if it's unknown. Looking at how is a file packed, is the code obfuscated, things like that to determine if something is suspicious. But what SentinelOne does is once it's installed, it actually monitors every process on the machine in real time and looks for those anomalies. So very strong AI-based detection, stopping attacks on the front end. And then furthermore, if an attack somehow does get through, SentinelOne, one of the key features that it has, one of its main selling points, is its ransomware rollback capability. It's a patented technology that they have. If one of your machines gets infected, I can actually use SentinelOne to roll back to a previous state in a matter of seconds. It's very impressive. I'll show you a demo of that here at the end. And do want to point out that is at the moment only available on Windows machines, but that functionality is going to be coming to Mac and Linux as well eventually. SentinelOne does work on all three, Windows, Mac, and Linux, with basic complete feature parity aside from that ransomware rollback. That's a Windows-only feature at this time. So we talked about kind of the endpoint protection, the front-end piece of the solution, AI-based detection, responding at machine speed. We'll talk more about how SentinelOne tests independently. They've done very well, but through a combination of their detection engines, SentinelOne really has shown to be leading the pack as far as being able to identify those anomalies and quickly respond to them. Beyond that, we talked about this. You're going to have a set of recovery tools with SentinelOne EDR, including the ability to isolate a machine from the network, roll back to a previous state, and remediation commands. So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here with the underlying technology flow, but essentially SentinelOne will first do a reputation check. This is the first engine they have. They'll do a check of the hash. Then they'll look at the characteristics of a file using what's called their static AI. So when a file is being downloaded, they're looking for how similar is this file to known ransomware. And then after that, SentinelOne is doing what they call active EDR code analysis. So tracking and monitoring every process of the machine in real time, and as soon as something takes a turn for the worse, able to stop that process and then tell you exactly what happened throughout that. Then you have your recovery options, which we talked about. Okay. So why SentinelOne? Well, they lead the industry right now as far as testing. So they're a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. If you guys are familiar with that organization, they are the highest rated EDR vendor in the Voice of the Customer report. So really high satisfaction there. And then what I think is very impressive is their third-party testing with the MITRE attack evaluation. So MITRE is a government-funded organization that essentially tracks and documents, standardizes attack techniques of bad actors. They also do EDR testing. And in the most recent round, SentinelOne actually broke records. They were the first vendor to have 0 missed detections. It's never happened before, and 100% attack chain visibility, okay, among some other things. So if you look here, they led the pack. Very impressive performance. They had 0 missed detections. They had the highest amount of analytic detection coverage. Essentially what that means is their detections provided the most context to an attack, telling what happened and how it happened. I see a question here. Mike's asking if SentinelOne work on Windows servers, RDP servers. Yes, sir, it does. It does. So workstations, servers, virtual or physical, SentinelOne's going to work. It's a very flexible solution. So again, as you can see here, leading the pack in that case. And so just to break down some of those results a little bit more, some key points. We talked about this: 0 missed detections. Okay, definitely instills confidence. They had the highest amount of analytic detections, so the most detailed and provided the most context to those threats that were detected. They had 0 configuration changes. So let me explain this. What that means is that SentinelOne works out of the box. A lot of these other products are very complex, and when you implement them, there's a lot of management that goes into it. Now, obviously, Codabears will be taking that on, but with SentinelOne, they've streamlined their product, so it doesn't require a lot of management. You can put it in place and have confidence that regardless of how it's been installed or what policies are in place, it's going to work. It's going to work, and so it's not going to require a lot of configuration. And then they also had 0 delayed detection. So essentially what that means is SentinelOne is detecting these threats in real time as they occur, which means they're able to respond faster when there is an incident. A lot of these attacks are high velocity, these advanced ransomware attacks. They're high velocity and they spread quickly. So you need a solution that can identify and respond in a timely manner, and SentinelOne is proven to be able to do that. Okay. So I do want to show the ransomware rollback demo, which I'll do here in just a minute. And I encourage you guys, check out the SentinelOne YouTube channel. They are always uploading videos of new strains of ransomware that are prominent out there and actually showing their solution respond to that. Not only detect it, but then roll back a threat. Now, I won't want to finish on this, but first I'd actually love to just show you the SentinelOne console here. Are you guys able to see my screen? I believe so. I'll just change my, hold on, getting a little lag here.
We can see it.
Okay, excellent. Just give it a sec here to load. This is what we call the demo effect. Okay, there we go. All right, excellent. So here is the SentinelOne console. And so obviously Codabears would be taking ownership of this and monitoring the alerts as they come in. They have customizable dashboards here where they can at a moment's glance see if there are any unresolved threats or infected endpoints. They can see the types of threats, where there might be a potential attack surface. But the good thing about SentinelOne is, yes, Codabears is going to be in place managing this solution, but SentinelOne is able to be configured where it responds automatically to threats as they're detected. So it doesn't require manual intervention to take action and protect your organization. It's going to do that again at machine speed and in real time. So just to show you an example, if I come here under SentinelOne policy, and I don't want to do a full onboarding here to the solution like I might do with an engineering team, but what I do want to show are a few key things. So under SentinelOne, it will classify threats as either malicious or suspicious, depending on the AI confidence that it is malicious. But I have the ability here to protect, and essentially push a automated protection to either type of threat. This actually is the recommended here, as we want to detect on suspicious and protect on malicious. Then you'll see here under protect level, I actually have the option to automate all of these three response options. So your traditional antivirus, really the only response that you're going to have is to kill that threat, potentially quarantine that file. But with SentinelOne, I'm actually going to have two other options. So just to define these, remediate would actually totally remove that threat off the machine and then revert any system changes that were made. You can think of it as like a one-click cleanup on a machine. And then rollback is the nuclear option. This is where SentinelOne leverages the volume shadow copies on a local machine and actually allow me to restore my machine to a clean state prior to the infection. And that happens in a matter of seconds. Okay, but I can automate all the way up to a rollback feature with SentinelOne. Now that may not be best practice. We always usually want to review a threat before I push that rollback. So I recommend keeping that kill and quarantine. But just know that I have that ability with SentinelOne to automate basically every response that's possible. Another response we had mentioned was the ability to isolate an infected machine. So SentinelOne gives me that level of control where if there is an incident, I can segment that infected machine from the rest of my network. I can prevent the spread of ransomware. What ransomware is very good at doing, or any type of malware, is once it gets an entry point into a network, it quickly spreads and infects multiple machines. So with SentinelOne, I actually have the ability where I can turn on this containment, and as soon as a machine is infected or an alert is detected, it can automatically trigger a containment where that machine is then automatically isolated while the code bearers are able to then analyze that threat, take the appropriate action to remediate that threat, and then return that computer to the network. So really great tool in the fight against ransomware with that containment feature. SentinelOne's also going to provide some additional features here. Network control, I can actually centrally manage firewall rules on all my endpoints through SentinelOne from a single pane of glass. And then I can also manage through SentinelOne which devices are allowed to access our endpoint. I can actually block unauthorized USB or Bluetooth devices from accessing my network. So if someone picks up a USB, common attack, someone drops an infected USB stick in a parking lot, someone picks it up, plugs it in their computer, that can infect a network, just like that. However, with SentinelOne, I can actually block that USB from entering my network. Now, SentinelOne would probably pick up that malicious process either way, but still having that, often it's a compliance concern, being able to have that level of control of your endpoints, something you get through SentinelOne. Okay. I want to pivot now to the incidents tab. So this is where, as threats are detected, they're going to populate here under this incidents page. Okay, and SentinelOne, based on our configuration, is going to automatically respond to these. But then what's so great about this tool is it gives us so much information about what's happened. It tells us exactly the machines that are infected. It tells us what actions have been taken. I want to show you the level of detail that I actually get. So here's a simulated threat that we've put here in our demo console. We get a lot of good information here about the threat itself, the file path, what mitigation actions were taken. In this case, a rollback happened. Rollback 3 threat changes in less than 2 seconds. We're seeing indicators here of why this was potentially malicious. Okay, but if I actually go here, I click View Threat Details, we're going to go into the full view of this threat and see what's going on. And so a lot of the same information I just showed there in kind of the Spark Notes view with some additional context. Responding to this threat is as simple as coming here under Action, and then if I wanted to manually push these mitigation commands, I could. Although in this case, we've already initiated a rollback, so can't push anything at this point. And then what I do want to show here is something called the SentinelOne attack storyline. So this is actually patented technology. This shows you how SentinelOne is monitoring every process on the machine and able to track from the root everything that spawned as part of that threat. So this gives the code bearers a wealth of information when they're analyzing what's happening in your environment. They're able to see literally every single command line. If there are registry changes that were made, they're able to see that right here. And so that gives them that granular view, that visibility, where now they can take the correct action and not only remediate this threat and reverse any changes, but prevent this from happening again. And so this is EDR in action, right? This is EDR in action. That visibility, that context, that full story of what happened of an attack. And SentinelOne does this probably better than any other vendor out there on the market today. It's a clean UI, easy to navigate, full of data. I have all the raw data down here that I can search through, and then a set of tools here to respond to that threat. So very powerful tool. Some might even say it's overkill the amount of data that they provide. But in the world of cybersecurity, where you want to know everything that's happening in your environment, SentinelOne can really deliver on that promise, right? So that's what I want to show in the demo today. I do want to finish on that ransomware rollback. I think that would be a nice thing to demonstrate here. So what we're going to watch here is SentinelOne versus Avos Locker. So they're actually going to allow this ransomware to run. They'll put SentinelOne in detect only mode, allow it to propagate on a network, and then they'll roll it back to a previous state. So as you can see, they're putting it on detect only mode. I'll kind of skip through some of this. Be detected, but they're allowing it to execute. Okay. So they'll come here. They're going to launch the payload at this point. Again, machine speed detection happens almost automatically, or instantly rather, but as your typical ransom note, talking about how to pay. Typically at this point, either you have your backups and your backups work, or you have, you're without your data, you have to pay the ransom. There's not a lot of options, but SentinelOne gives you that next option here with this rollback. So pivoting here to the threat details, looking at the threat indicators, which are mapped to the MITRE attack framework, those attack techniques I talked about. In this case, a behavioral AI engine detected suspicious behavior. And now we're seeing the storyline populate in real time. And so literally with click of a button, all the files are decrypted, machine's back to a clean state, and that happens in a matter of seconds. So never going to replace your backup or DR solution. Should always have good backups in place. But the difference here is I have another layer of protection in place, and my recovery time is now, instead of hours of reimaging, literally a matter of seconds. Codebears push a ransomware rollback attack, and you guys are back online. All right, so I do want to open it up for questions. I think we have like 3 minutes left here, if I'm correct, or let me double check my.
Yep, we got about 3 minutes. So if anyone has any questions, thank you, Mason. Please type them into the chat window. What is the cost for a single workstation?
So that's something that the Codebears could quote you on. I'm not quite sure how they're structuring their packages, but something they could
Yeah,
definitely.
this is going to vary depending on how much how much you want us to manage the solution going forward. Typically, or yeah, I would have to say it depends on your size as well. Please contact us for a quote. But this is a under $10 per machine, per month, a solution, much less typically. Question
Yeah, good question.
on yeah,
Go ahead.
how much
Go ahead, Bob.
overhead on a workstation?
Yeah, so this is a common question, right? Because the real-time monitoring, would lead you to believe that it would have a heavy footprint. It actually doesn't. It actually has a very minimal footprint. We run this internally here at our organization, and looking at like 250 megs commonly. The reason it's low is because it's at the kernel level. It is monitoring those processes, but there's no taxing scans that are going on. Where you actually see a lot of performance hit is if you need to do a full scan of your system. And SentinelOne doesn't do that. It's just monitoring processes in real time. So minimal footprint. The minimum requirements are like a gig of RAM on a machine, so it can work on pretty much any machine.
Yeah, I have a
Uh,
number of clients that use this solution, and it hasn't been an issue with anyone for overhead. And when you first do the install, it's slow for for a few hours. So we set it up in group policy to install and to not reboot until the user's ready.
yep. Yeah, it's a great point. So there is a one-time scan. When you first install the SentinelOne agent, it's going to do a full disk scan, where it's basically just indexing the machine, looking for those potentially malicious files. But then after that, it's monitoring everything in real time. So there's no need for a scan moving forward. Now you can push one, but honestly, it's useless at that point. Now, but great question. Another really good question here from Matthew. So the rollback feature looks to rely fully on Microsoft VSS shadow copies. You're correct. What if the ransomware deletes said shadow copies? This is a man that knows what he's talking about. This is the first question usually I get asked when I talk about that. And the reason being, ransomware typically goes after those volume shadow copies because they want to prevent any recovery from that. SentinelOne has a proprietary method to protect those shadow copies. Essentially, what they do, what we've been told is they actually feed that ransomware a false command. So when the ransomware goes to delete the shadow copies, Sentinel will say, yes, you've deleted it, you're all set, when in fact it's actually been protected, and ransomware hasn't impacted it. So very good question, Matt. And I'm actually not back to back, so happy to stay on if there's any more questions. So I'll hang around for another minute or two.
Yeah, thank you for presenting that, Mason, and thank you, Bill, and everybody for the opportunity here today.
I thank you all,